Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona. Let's go with the first question.
Ajahn, our first question today from the live stream is from Hermit Mouse in Tucson, Arizona, United States. What would life be like for the reborn stream enterer?
Yeah, this is the case. So just for everybody's elucidating this, stream enterer is this first stage of enlightenment. There are 4 stages of enlightenment in the Theravada tradition. In the early Buddhist canon, the teachings of the historical Buddha, as far as we know, it's very explicit and very detailed descriptions of what happens in human psychology when enlightenment experiences occur. And if you want a full description of this, I have on this channel the several talks on the stages of enlightenment, which seems to be quite a popular video, stages of enlightenment. You know that this use of the word enlightenment is so general and so it can mean anything to all kinds of people, but it has very, very specific meanings in early Buddhism and is very precisely defined. It's a masterpiece of human psychology. So those who are vague about it, please watch those talks on the stages of enlightenment by Ajahn Sona on this channel. By the way, so I don't know whether if you're watching this on YouTube, you may not know that there is a channel. So Ajahn Sona channel. If you add channel on there, then you come into the whole collection of talks, which is somewhere around 320 now, 320 videos. So we're covering a lot of material over time now. So let's go back to the stream enterer, the first stage of enlightenment. In Pali, this is called Sotapanna. And so one can take rebirth after the first stage of enlightenment, and what seems to be bedrock, which is not lost, is a moral standard. And this standard of virtue is based on a certain amount of compassion and recognition of yourself in others. That is, you recognize that other conscious beings experience pain like you do, and they fear death, all these things. So you tend not to be harmful towards them. They also appreciate not being lied to or mistreated, sexually mistreated, or also one appreciates clarity of mind, so one does not indulge in intoxicants, drugs, or alcohol. So this is the nature of the Sotapanna. It's really their nature now, and it accompanies them even in early childhood. They're a very moral, ethical being, and so they even, insects and so forth, they don't, some children are very maybe curious or about small animals. They may injure them and so forth. The stream enterer is very careful and appreciative of other beings and their need for safety, and is emotionally, has control. It doesn't mean that they're perfectly free of anger or desire. They're not, but the motivations of anger and desire don't cause them to step over any of these boundaries of ethics. So this is the kind of the character of the Sotapanna. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next question here.
Next question from the live stream is from Vishal in Canada. Dear Ajahn, is it possible through a deep samadhi combined with the attainment of full enlightenment or arahantship to consciously leave the body at a time of one's choosing? In other words, pass away after arahantship and attain to parinibbana? Apparently, the Buddha was contemplating doing this upon enlightenment before deciding to teach.
Yeah, I would say that there's a difference in a fully enlightened Buddha and other, like an arahant even with psychic powers. There is some stories of arahants who are very seriously, like arahant means fully enlightened, the fourth stage of enlightenment, fully enlightened, no further return to rebirth or samsara. So sometimes they get very, very ill, and there's no, they have an irreversible illness, and so they might not make much effort to sustain their existence at all. But it's not a feature of the fully enlightened being to, relinquish life early. If they're functional, then they do have the capacity to teach or be an example. So they remain alive for that purpose. They're not clinging to existence. They feel entirely equanimous about the nature of death, because in a sense they have no sense of self, so they don't have a sense of that I am going to die. The small sense of self is not there, so the fear of death or even the sense of a personal death is not there either. So they're not in any hurry to get along with things, but the Buddha himself was said to be able to maintain his life for a significant period of time just through psychic determination. But his program was that he would try to establish the sasana, the teachings, more or less what in the West we would call a religion, and get trained disciples, very competent disciples, before he passed on. And this was his determination, and he seemed to have accomplished this, felt satisfied with it at 80 years old. And he was significantly ill at that time with more or less dysentery or some sort of food poisoning, and chose not to sort of forcibly overcome that experience, relinquished the determination to remain alive, and then passed in, or had the, we call it parinibbana, the final nirvana, more or less the death of an enlightened person. And so you can see that there is some sort of voluntary determination about lifespan, especially with a fully enlightened Buddha, but primarily it's not something they just abandon their life. Some of them seem to know, and even others seem to know about the time of their death. They seem to have a sense of the duration of their life. And some of them have made predictions that I will die at such and such a time, and those predictions have come true. It's very interesting. One of the types of meditations that seems to be accompanied by the sense of the end of life is breath meditation. So this is a commentarial assertion. You'll find this I think in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, that one who practices breath meditation a lot and has accomplishments in it, one of the sort of psychic side effects is a sense of when the expiration date is, when one will cease from this activity of breathing. So fascinating exploration of these supernormal states of mind that are possible to achieve through deliberate cultivation of the mind. These are supernormal attainments. Average people don't have them, although there are all kinds of reports of people who have a sense of impending mortality, and it turns out to be correct. So it seems to be possible that some humans have a intuition of their time for departure. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next question.
Next question from the live stream is from No One Everyone in Iran. Dear Ajahn Sona, when talking about samsara, it is often described as without beginning and without end itself. But is it possible for a, quote, individual mind, unquote, to put an end to it after uprooting all the fetters? How can the ending of samsara, even on an individual level, not be in conflict with the laws of causality? How can something without beginning ever come to an end? This would only seem to make sense if samsara didn't exist in the first place and is ultimately a fabricated dreamlike reality which only exists about as much as our past lives exist now, or as much as this life will exist eons later. Can you please shine some light on this, dear Venerable Sir?
Yeah, there is no clear statement about the beginning, or whether samsara is beginningless or has a beginning. This is one of the questions which the Buddha suggested that one sets aside. Same for the entire universe. Does the universe have a beginning or not? This is a contemporary question in astrophysics. Is there a universe before the Big Bang, or did it just erupt out of nothing? And you seem to have physicists on both sides. Some have the theory of a cyclical, Big Bangs, or intersection of two universes that caused the Big Bang, and others are saying, well, it arises out of nothing. So this discussion has gone on to this day, and the Buddha actually, this is 2,500 years ago, said, and people were thinking about it then and had arguments on both sides. You're wasting your time. That's not if you answer the question, it still won't mean anything. But besides, you really can't conceive of something coming out of nothing, and you can't conceive of something eternal either. The mind, it's unthinkable. So this is the word he used, actually, unthinkable. Achintya. And so he doesn't proclaim either the beginninglessness of samsara or the beginning of samsara. He doesn't proclaim that. He says, just forget about that. Work on your reduction of suffering. Can it come to an end? Yes. Well, he's very clear about this, that samsara, in the sense of birth and suffering, can cease. That can cease, and that would be the final nibbana or nirvana, the ultimate end of the cycle of birth and death. And how that can occur is that the reduction of the fuel. So what we know is the fuel that keeps things going on. Samsara keep going on because of craving. Like there's motivation in human psyches. Well, not just human psyches, but in all conscious beings' psyches. There are desires. Sometimes the desire is for the end of it. Sometimes the desire is for continuation of it. Both of them are desires. As you see in human, you see some people seeking to end their life. They will attempt to commit suicide, or they will reduce their experience of life through, heavy drug addiction or something like that. They're looking for annihilation. But that's a desire, and unfortunately, that doesn't end things. It keeps things going. And then there's the people who want to live a long time, or they want to live forever, and that's a desire, and that keeps things going on. But it is ultimately unsatisfactory to continue. Existence itself is fraught with endings and loss. The loss of things that you like, and the presentation of things that you do not like. And there is no escape from this within samsara, including in the heavens. So this is something very definite that the Buddha proclaims, which is in conflict with some of the Christian teachings, some Islamic teachings, etc. So they have these ideas of eternal heaven. Buddhism, 500 years before Christ, was fully aware of heavens, had full descriptions of heavens, and they said, but by the way, it's not permanent, it doesn't last forever, and that's the problem. This is kind of like the view of the universe before about 1925 or 30, including people like Einstein. When he was a young man, the basic thought about the universe by physicists and so forth was that it's possibly eternal and stable, that it just might always have been there. But at some point, through development of telescopes, better telescopes, they realize, it's not eternal by any means. Stars are blinking out, vanishing, and that it's not stable either. It's actually expanding. This completely changed a vision of the universe as static, possibly eternal. It changed everything, and it is more in line with the Buddhist idea that nothing, like the universes, are not stable or eternal. They keep cycling, changing. One thing turns into another, diminishes, falls away, etc. So the fuel, how to get out of this is through the deprivation of fuel. So that the Buddha makes the simile of a candle. When a flame continues as long as there's fuel for it. So a candle keeps burning because there's wax. But when the wax runs out, the candle goes out, and the flame ceases. There's no flame. And then people ask, well, they don't ask, actually. Most people don't ask where the flame went. It went out. But people ask what happens to an enlightened person when they die. And the Buddha said it's like asking about whether a candle when it went out, did it go to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west? And none of those are the kind of questions that make sense to ask about a candle going out. It simply ceases when there's no fuel, there's no flame. And that's when there's no motivation for continuation through enlightenment, then there's a cessation of the process of samsara. So that's the description. Let's go on.
Next question is from Stephen in Negros Occidental, Philippines. Outside of equanimity, upekkha, how are the other three immeasurables, the Brahma Viharas, not a type of clinging to that which is impermanent and immaterial? Why are loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic joy not seen as obstacles? Are they not directed towards that which is impermanent and immaterial, thus a type of clinging? I hope this is not too, quote, philosophical or naive a question.
No, that's an excellent question. And, this is why we have these Q&As. These are like, you're allowed to think. Buddhism encourages you to resolve these things, and this is good thinking. What about that? And Buddhism fully explains this relationship of these divine states. So, loving kindness is a state of consciousness, which is very beautiful, and so is compassion and sympathetic joy. And then there's the fourth one of these beautiful mind states is equanimity, where you remain in a balanced condition, perfectly balanced and quite unreactive to the situations in existence. And so that some people see the teaching of the Buddha leading to that non-reactive state, which indeed it does. But it doesn't mean that you can't also radiate loving kindness. The Buddha himself was very profound in his radiation of loving kindness, his practice of compassion, his sympathetic joy. So he was able to enter these and praised these states. But he didn't say that they themselves are the final dissolution of samsara. They are, if practiced alone by themselves, they lead to basically what's called heaven. But if they can be an assistance to enlightenment, because they, first of all, one pernicious negative emotion is anger, the opposite of loving kindness. So you can get free of anger by practice of loving kindness, and that allows you to access your a better and stronger mind state that is more likely to result in enlightenment. Loving kindness itself is not enlightenment, but it's not an impediment to enlightenment. But it needs to be accompanied by reflection, insight, investigation as well. Yeah.
Next question from the live stream is from Sumana in Alberta. On Wesak, I found a meditation led by a Thai monk in the Theravada tradition called, quote, Boran Kamatana, unquote. It involved visualization, which is new to me. Please speak a little to this technique.
Yeah, we had to look that up. I've heard of it, but it's one of a whole segment of meditation structures. It's very fascinating. I mean, anthropologists, it's a field day for anthropologists to look at Buddhist history. There are a number of different schools of Buddhism where I'm in the Theravada school, which is usually another way of talking about the Pali Canon, the earliest Vinaya and the suttas that are preserved in the Pali Canon. And I'm very interested in the practices described in the suttas. Later on in history, Buddhism, like all religions, becomes what is called syncretic. It mixes with other forms. So if you go to Tibet, you'll see Buddhism mixed with what's called the Bon religion, B-O-N. If you go at certain times in history, you'll see Buddhism mixing with shamanic type of practices, which tend to result in a school called Tantra. It's Tantric Buddhism, and Tantra has quite a reputation as quite a very, very wild, very magical kind of production. You'll also see somewhat shocking, very, very shocking to especially the British colonial mind. When Britain came to India, they were famously very prudish, and you see the Victorian attitudes to things. There was no mention of sexuality at all. Even piano legs were covered because kind of suggestive. You know, if you see an exposed piano leg, you never know what's going to happen. So when they came there, they discovered temples in the certain parts of India, I think in the north of India, that had explicit sexual carvings on them in stone of the most graphic, pornographic images carved prolifically all over these temples. And these were tantric temples. And it somehow was related to Buddhism, but mostly from the Theravada viewpoint. We're kind of the Victorian types, you know, we're rather prudish about all this. So we don't understand how they got that out of the teaching of the Buddha. So it's fascinating to look at the history in Thailand, Burma, even Sri Lanka, also of the invention of new weird side cults of Buddhism. So there's a lot of weird and wonderful, magical, strange stuff that is not typical of mainstream Buddhism, but is become part of like folk Buddhism. This is kind of, you see this in Christianity. You wonder how all these guys that are snake handlers, like where on earth does, you know, this term holy roller, like people in these ecstatic fundamentalist churches, usually found in the United States, where they're kind of running around out of their minds and rolling on the down the aisles, and then there's another ones that are handling snakes and showing their faith through handling snakes, and there's all kinds of weird and wonderful additions. If you go to Mexico, you'll find all kinds of cults of the Black Virgin and syncretic mixtures of shamanic ideas, a fascination with the weird and the wonderful. So this occurs in Buddhism as well, as it mixes. And Buddhism is quite tolerant, you know. There's a lot of folk medicine and magic potions and things like this, but it's not the essential main high teachings of the Buddha at all. So these are things that develop in cultures, but I think to some degree one is distracting oneself by engaging with these things. One should try to clearly comprehend what the Four Noble Truths are and the Eightfold Path and a path of virtue, and trust the magic of a virtuous life. The real magic is a well-behaved person that has goodwill for people. That's a magical thing. That's a miracle in itself. Is a beautiful, kindly person. That's the miracle. Yeah.
Next question from the live stream is from Raphael in France. What is love? I read Ajahn Jayasaro's book, quote, On Love, unquote, and wondered if you could say a few things about what real love is.
A few things about what real love is. Well, I mean, I've said a few things about it, like try about 15 hours of talk about loving kindness. Please refer to my series on loving kindness. I give short talks on it. I give medium-length talks on it, and I give exhaustive talks on it. I give 11 or 12 talks, like a whole series of talks on loving kindness, and exhaust everything about it, everything you could possibly think about. So if you really want to know about it, listen to the talks on the YouTube channel. But in brief, what is the attitude of loving kindness? It is described as the Buddha as the wish for the safety of beings, for yourself and for all beings. All beings share something in common. They're all sensitive to pain, and they don't appreciate pain. They would like not to have bad things inflicted upon them, cruelties and lack and so forth. Everybody likes to eat. The Buddha says, what is the worst illness? And it is hunger. Now, why is it the worst illness? Because we know the cure. Food is the cure. So one of the great, terrible things to see is our beings deprived of food. And we know instantly the cure for that. So, it's a beautiful thing to feed. Feed yourself and feed other beings. And this would be the type of thought that a loving person would have. It's like, I like to eat. I don't like to be hungry. I think everybody feels that way. All beings feel that way. So it's the wish for safety and well-being. As a mother loves and protects her child, her only child. So you can imagine a mother and her only child. The mother has to, in the early days, in the early parts of the child's life, the mother feeds the child directly from the breast milk, right from her own bodily fluids, feeds the child, and cleans the child and takes care of the child and protects the child. This is the kind of sublime attitude, mother's love kind of thing for beings. So the more we come to that, the more we have a sense of great peace descends upon us, and well-being. The more we have that attitude to other beings, the more peace and well-being descends upon us. So this is the nature of loving kindness. Yeah.
Next question is from Roth in Peru. Dear Ajahn, is it true gaining stream entry is achievable by listening to the Dhamma firstly, and lastly by meditation and by jhana?
Well, it can be in different sequences. It can be listening to the Dhamma, but the person doesn't have enough experience, doesn't have enough capacity for attention, and so the Dhamma they can't process the Dhamma. So they need to go off and practice meditation, mindfulness, and maybe even samadhi, some form of deep concentration. And then the mind is able to process what is hearing as Dhamma. So it goes in different stages, can be put... There's a simile the Buddha uses about a cart that is being pulled by two oxen, a white ox and a black ox. You don't see many ox carts these days, but it was a big thing in the 5th century BC. So you can harness the ox with the white one in front and the black one behind, the black one in front, the white one behind, or side by side. And in each case, they both contribute to the pulling of the cart. But you might prioritize concentration, development of attention, or you might prioritize just hearing the Dhamma as the thing that comes in front. But in one way or the other, you've got to have both. You've got to hear Dhamma and have concentration and attention. They both pull the cart. Yeah. Okay, next question.
Next question is from Michael in Sweden. I have read about the moral group, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, as a basis for the practice of mindfulness. However, I feel that they are incomplete in relation to the modern world. For example, could idle chatter be considered the watching of TV? What about intoxicants and the like? I could follow what is written and still feel the 5 hindrances strongly.
I think you need a closer reading of that group. Under right speech is 4 types of right speech, and one of them is frivolous speech. So harsh, false speech and full awareness, that is lying. Deliberate, fully aware attempt to deceive. A harsh speech, which is cursing and yelling and so forth. A divisive speech, where you attempt to you tell bad things about one person here to another person, hoping to divide them. And then the last one is frivolous speech, which is maybe just babble on television, or it doesn't matter whether it's from a human or whether the human is being recorded. I'm being recorded right now. When I speak through this medium doesn't absolve me from right speech. I need to speak in the appropriate way. So, and when you listen, you particularly want to avoid a frivolous, wasteful, meaningless, pointless speech. So use some discretion in terms of your media indulgence. Secondly, the use of intoxicants is not specifically mentioned in the under right action and right speech. Four of the five precepts are mentioned in under right speech and right action. So the four that are mentioned are non-killing, non-stealing, no sexual misconduct, and no wrong speech. Specifically, usually it's just mentioned as lying, but the other four are all there in the path. You need the drop-down menus in the path. When you look at the Eightfold Path, under each heading are more details. So allow the drop-down menu to come, and you'll see that there's 4 types of wrong speech. Intoxicants are not specifically mentioned in that, but they are implied under right mindfulness, the deliberate avoidance of things which weaken clarity or mindfulness. And they're also, of course, mentioned, the avoidance of intoxicants are mentioned in the, or not just mentioned, they're featured in the 5 precepts. So the 5 core precepts, which are undertaken by lay people, and they're also in ways undertaken by monastics, are the avoidance of indulgence in intoxicants, of alcohol and drugs which weaken attention, weaken mindfulness. And one of the reasons is that if in intoxicated states, one is more inclined to break the other 4 precepts. So you'll see how connected the negligence that comes from drinking alcohol or drugs to murder, to theft, to sexual misconduct, all kinds of violent sexual activity and exploitation of others and so forth, and also the negligence of speech, so lying and harsh speech and all this negative speech, and including frivolous babbling. If you want to hear frivolous babbling, just hang around with drunk people. So intoxicants weaken your intelligence and your mindfulness, and make it much more likely to violate some of the ethical boundaries that the people have. So this is it's all in the path. It's all there. So you just need to read more carefully. Yeah.
Next question is from Andrew in London, UK. Dear Ajahn Sona, please could you say something about the rarity of the emergence of a Buddha and also a human rebirth? Also, why should we make the most of our time to practice the Dhamma in samsara?
Well, the arising of a Buddha, in history, we don't seem to have any other record, of direct record of a Buddha arising, except in India in the 5th century BC. The one we're familiar with is Gautama Buddha. I suppose other people have laid claim to being a Buddha, but they've not really matched up. There's all kinds, it's like people laying claim to be the Messiah or Christ or something like this. And there's all kinds of cults and so forth where people think they are, but it's an easy delusion. But so in history, all of history, we know of only one. The Buddha himself does seem, apparently in the suttas, seems to recall previous Buddhas in vastly long periods of time. We don't, in our modern sense of history about how long humans have been on the earth and evolutionary theory, we can't even guess about any Buddhas prior to the one that we know of in our history. So however we look at it, it's a rare occurrence. It's rarer than an Einstein or a Newton, rarer than a Mozart or Beethoven. A spectacular genius of human nature, of psychology, of spiritual advice. Buddhism, by the way, is the most psychological of all the spiritualities and the most spiritual of all the psychologies. But it has the Buddha himself has great insight into human motivations and how the mind works, etc. So we benefit, and many people, because of that, they may not have sort of a religious, spiritual sense, but they appreciate some of the advice the Buddha gives, because it's a very effective psychological advice. So he's a psychological genius. So yes, it's a very rare occurrence. And then human birth, from a Buddhist perspective, like the rarity of human birth is you can't even address that from a sort of materialistic evolutionary point of view. We might address it. We might say, how many other planets in the universe have life on them? So far, we know of none. I mean, from a scientific point of view, we have come up with precisely none. There's all kinds of speculation because of the enormous structure, billions and billions of galaxies and stars and planets and so forth. We think, well, there's got to be a life. Maybe it's even more advanced than the humans are on Earth, etc. So, but it's speculation. So, as far as we know, this planet is the only one in the solar system with human life, and we haven't spotted anything like humans. According to science, there's all kinds of reports of alien visitors and so forth. It remains it's very hard to verify. It's some people would say, well, there's all kinds of evidence for it. Others would say, no, there's no actual confirmed cases. On and on. So the question needs to be in the context. So what does Buddhism say about human rebirth? It says it's a very rare thing. There's many possibilities for birth as a being, and human rebirth is a very fortunate one. It's not the most fortunate one. There are births that can take place into the heavens where it's much, much preferable to human existence. Human existence, from a Buddhist point of view, is very short, just a mere handful of decades. And it's fraught with illness and, of course, very rapid aging and death. And you can see it all over it's very obvious in the human realm that suffering is just everywhere. Animals are in pain and dying, and humans they die in wars and in famines and in pandemics, and I mean, how many ways there are to suffer and die as a human. So this is it's both unfortunate and fortunate. One of the fortunate things is that you have a very clear view of suffering. And secondly, you're intelligent enough. Well, not all humans are intelligent enough, but some humans are intelligent enough to wonder about can we transcend this situation of inevitable death and suffering? Is there a solution to this? And it's because it's so obvious in human life. It can be said to be fortunate that you can see it and you can't escape the notion of the precariousness of human life, the vulnerabilities, and it drives you to look for solutions. So let us go on.
Next question from the live stream is from Moria. Did the Buddha teach that when a person is born, their past karma determines when they will die? So basically, no matter what you do in the present life, it will not prolong or shorten your life?
Fascinating topic, this short life karma, long life karma. So there is, you do have a kind of a resultant of which is a result of past actions, which may be in this life or in previous lives. So you might be born into this life with what is called long life karma, where you just have a very long life. You live over 100 years, and you'll see this certain portion of humanity lives over 100 years. And some of them have been through every kind of war and every kind of contagious illness and craziness and everything. They just keep going, and they don't particularly even, they don't maybe have healthy habits either. They tend to drink, smoke, and they're not on a health regime. And by gosh, they live longer than, more than a century. So that's what we call long life karma. And others, short life, they die very early, very young. They might even die in the womb. So these are not necessarily explainable. Some people are just walking down the street and drop dead on the sidewalk. And medical examiners can't find a particular cause. There is no specific cause. They just die. Sometimes it's mixed with, somebody's in a bit of they bump their head on something and never regain consciousness. Other people, they're in an extreme car accident, thrown out through the windshield and land, and they end up with broken bones and everything, but they recover and they live long. All kinds of people in wars have sometimes 4 or 5 bullets through them, and more than that, and they recover and live long. So there's something aside from, fragility of the body, or in medical conditions, there are other factors seem to be at play in this short life and long life, and that's what we would call this long life or short life karma. But it can be affected by actions in this life. So you might have, because of past life productions. So what would give you long life karma, long life sort of resultants, would be being not shortening the lives of other beings to begin with, and also nurturing. Treating illnesses, feeding people, maintaining beings' lives, and not shortening them through killing or anything like that would give you long life karma. But killing other beings and shortening their lives and so forth would give you a resultant of shorter life karma. It may not play out in the present life. You can see people who work in a slaughterhouse for 40 years and they live to be 90, whatever. You see people from the Second World War who killed thousands of people and lived into their 90s. So it doesn't necessarily play out in this life, but it from a Buddhist point of view, it will play out one life or another. Yeah. Okay, let's have another question.
Next question from the live stream is from Vadana. Please talk more about conceit and what it looks like on a spiritual path.
Well, Conceit is an English word, and it has strong connotations, more or less a very strong admiration or overestimation of one's self. You might, in fact, of course, a conceited person might be accurate. They might be very good at something. They're a very good scholar or something like that, or they're very handsome and they really think they're very handsome and they're very conceited about it. They might not be, but still conceited about it. So conceit is a very strong sense of self and a lot of importance being placed on certain capacities that one has. But it comes along with a problematic side too, because if any evidence to the contrary appears, if it turns out that somebody else is better than you at it, or you lose your, say your nice straight teeth and your nice straight nose, and then one day get a tooth knocked out or something like that, or something goes wrong with your nose, and that's your big point of pride, then what are you going to do? You're going to suffer. You miss your beauty. You lost your beauty, oh boy. So it's very dangerous to be have conceit around physical capacities or even mental capacities. People who are very bright, sometimes they degenerate in terms of their capacities through various declining abilities, and then they're not able to live up to the ideas that they have of themselves, and this can be very tragic for them. So it's very dangerous to have all of this. Conceit is problematic and dangerous. Yeah. Okay, let's have another question.
Next question from the live stream is from Joe in Yorkshire, United Kingdom. Dear Ajahn, what is a skillful way to deal with process addictions, i.e. internet usage, from a Dhamma perspective? As a lot of these things are inevitable in modern lay life, it seems impossible to avoid triggers completely. Is there a way to develop a skillful relationship with worldly things when someone already has deep-rooted addictions from a young age?
Yeah, I hear about this. Of course, humans have always been addicted to all kinds of things. And then, when I was growing up, it was the beginning of television, right? So, I didn't have a television until I was 6 or something like that, and it was a one-channel black and white thing. And I did notice that my little buddies, some of them wanted to stay in on a nice sunny day and watch cartoons, but I didn't. And then there was all this, children are being addicted to television. They want to watch television all the time, and it certainly was the case, but others, not so much, There's various theorists about this. There was a famous media guru called Marshall McLuhan in the 60s. The medium is the message, etc. He was a university professor at the University of Toronto, and he was studying media. So this is in the advent of this age called media, right? The media age. This is where radio starts. Of course, before that was newspapers. Even learning to read was thought, who put up your hand if you were addicted to reading? Me. Books, addiction. Because they had such great information in them, all kinds of, you could travel to any planet you want through a book, And there's always been worries about this. It's a matter of is it a negative addiction? What is addiction? Yeah. Certainly drugs have a long history in humans for addiction. Food and so forth. Addiction to food. But everybody needs food, right? Is food bad? Because some people are addicted to it. Like, we shouldn't stop eating food. Yikes. We have to eat. So it's our relationship to things is the problem. If if it's a clinging, a desire, a dependency, and especially if the dependency is not even personally approved of, like you don't approve of your watching endless media stuff on your computer. You don't approve. You think, I shouldn't be doing this. I don't want to do this, but I keep doing it. So that's where addiction is a problem. It's like with drugs. I do not want to drink more alcohol. It's a bad thing. I'm losing my money. I'm losing my family. And yet you do it. So that's addiction. That's a problematic addiction, right? So that's what we're interested in, is problematic addiction, where you yourself don't approve of it, but you can't seem to stop doing it. So this is where one has to, use skillful means and learn to break these habits, find an alternative, some sense of well-being. Usually an addiction like that is because it is comforting, it gives relief from a kind of vacancy, emptiness. It fills some needs. Some of them are more harmful than others. But yeah, I hear that there's great, especially kids that are raised with this. There's a lot of adults that, there was no internet until they were 40 years old or something like this. So it'll be less of an issue because your youthful brain, is formed and reformed by exposure to these things, especially when you're young. Not so much when you're older. So, yeah, it's going to be quite something, I think, for the generation born after 1995 or something like that. They will have exposure to this at extremely early ages, and the shape of their mind might be influenced by it negatively, but maybe not for some, maybe positive for some. So it's not just a write-off. The whole thing is not a write-off, and it depends on what you watch and how much time you spend with it and so forth. I've actually had a few people come to the monastery that have what are called video game addictions. And I was like, what do you mean? You like to watch video games? Or no, like for months at a time, and sometimes days, like 72 hours without sleeping, spending all of their money and time on it, and not able to get up, even to go to sleep, or, reluctantly use the washroom. That's an addiction for sure, and that's a very problematic addiction as well. Yeah, so yeah, it's something. It's not new in human history, though. There are all kinds of addictions that have always been there. It's just it's the nature of humans, and it's something that we want to free ourselves from. We shouldn't be so dependent for our happiness on any kind of external like that. Yeah. So we are basically at the end of our YouTube question and answer. I hope you're not getting addicted to this. Well, yeah, I think it's a good addiction. Every week should come to the Ajahn Sonas, and we will cut you off at the end of the hour. Yeah. Okay, so we will see you next week, hopefully.